Red Skull did nothing wrong. Hello, everybody, and welcome to, well, this is not Honey Badger Radio. This is just Brian Martinez, but welcome to my channel, and I have a very special stream. We're going to be talking the comics industry, specifically Marvel, but it could turn into discussions about any of them. I think you could make a case for X-Men for being about any kind of bigotry, and it's so it's so highbrow. I'm sorry, but I think it is. The X-Men allegory is so highbrow that it's almost above identity politics, because it talks about being sort of singled out in general, so you can apply it to anything: being gay, being of another race, being from another nation, whatever. And that's why it works better than when you tack on and you're really on the nose with the thing that you want to talk about. That's why I thought making Iceman gay it was weird, because he was making there was a bigger deal about him being outed as gay than there was about him being a mutant. And I'm like, but isn't being a mutant a lot worse? Like, there are literally people, that are trying to round up mutants and kill them. That's not really happening with gays. Like, why are you... The mutant thing is enough, is what I'm saying.
Right.
It's
and
enough.
Not being rounded up outside of Chechnya, anyway.
Yeah.
But they, it's not like he's even the first mutant, because there's been, North Star was, that was a huge, when was that, though? Because when North Star got married, that was a big thing. But
that was during Alpha Flight, Yeah,
that was back in the 80s. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, nobody cares. Like, we already talked about these issues. That doesn't mean we can't do it again, but they handled the North Star thing so much better, because it was done in a way where it was like, they didn't, I don't remember any virtue signaling to the extent that it happens now. It's just really sloppy these days.
Yeah, Claremont had something that a lot of writers these days don't either. Well, they either don't possess it, or they're completely and totally incapable of using it for political reason. And that's subtlety. He could make a character like Magneto come across like Malcolm X, but it's a subtle thing. You have to really read what he's saying. Same with Professor X and Martin Luther King Jr. Whereas you compare that to, I just finished catching up on X-Men Gold. Mark Guggenheim, who's not a bad writer, but he is about as subtle as a sledgehammer through a coffee table. Mm-hmm. And on X-Men Gold, especially the villain, I just forgot her name, but her way of speaking and her policy directions that she's suggesting are straight out of the book of Richard Spencer, word for word. And then you had the Red Skull basically sounding like Donald Trump not too long ago.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but they made the Red Skull sound reasonable by doing that. I know that he was not supposed to.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, hey, you're making me like Red Skull. Is like, oh, look, you sound now here. I've got this argument. People have made this argument at me, which is, well, Hitler sounded very reasonable. Therefore, Trump is Hitler, and so if you agree with anything Red Skull is saying, which he's talking about like nationalism essentially, then you agree with Hitler or something.
Red Skull did nothing wrong.
That's also the thing with a lot of the comics. It's not it's more that they're not giving us the escapism from the day-to-day politics of the real world. You have the Red Skull who essentially just rephrases things that Trump has said. You had, who was it, Odin, and that bloody bracket of
Boar. That was Odin's father. Odin's father. Who for some reason had opinions on Israel. I guess he's on Reddit down there. But yeah.
But then if you go back and read stuff like the Infinity Wars and the Infinity Gauntlet stuff, you're reading the dialogue of Thanos, and you're like, this is almost Shakespearean. You just have pages of him just being a villain. There's no politics there. There is just this character who's out for absolute power. And you're like, okay, I'm registering this guy as villain. There is nothing in this world I can compare him to except for a villain in a heroic narrative. But now, you have MODOK redrawn as Trump, just to go, well, Trump's a bad guy, MODOK's a bad guy. There you go, guys, enjoy it. And you're like, just give us some quality, guys.
Yeah. I want to also point this out. I just thought about this. This is a quick aside, because we were talking about North Star, and I thought, when did he get married? Because I want to talk about how quickly this has gone absolutely down the rabbit hole. So North Star was the first comic character to get gay married in comics. That was 2012. I didn't know. I had to recheck the year. I remember, was it 2013 that Dan Didio said that Batwoman couldn't get married in J.H. Williams' run, essentially, and canceled the gay wedding. So we're talking like 2013, maybe 2014. This whole gay thing was still being a little bit contested because his rationale behind that. I was at Baltimore Comic-Con when he announced that they were not going to do the Batwoman wedding, and I was very mad because it was J.H. Williams was great, and he said, well, nobody in New 52 DC is married. Like, I'm pretty fucking sure that Aquaman and Mera are married. And I was sitting in the crowd just irate. Mm-hmm. That was 4 years ago. And now it is completely turned on its head of anything that's not absolutely pushing this far left-wing agenda, pro-social justice stuff. That's now the abnormal. So when you can find a decent comic that's not absolutely dripping with this really horrible political allegory of MODOK is Trump, it becomes like a little surprise. I'll be like, oh shit, something's not written horribly.
One of the things that I had noticed is a lot of these books these days, the way that they write the characters, they're all very me. Like it's all about me. Like I need to, like the Mockingbird one. It's all about her. She's like, oh, I don't have powers, which is, I think is fucking stupid because she's been around since like the 60s or something, or maybe the 70s, and she's never gave a shit about that before, right? But all of a sudden, this is all about how depowered she is, and and it's so narcissistically written, and I'm like, these aren't heroes. Like, I think that heroes are characters that they put other people before themselves, and they make sacrifices, and they actually extend that courtesy a lot of times, unless you're the Punisher or something, to their enemies as well. And actually, that's what makes them attractive, because they make moral choices that we as human beings would normally have a really hard time making. Do you guys think that the writing has actually become incredibly dumbed down? Because the way that they used to write them when I was reading them in the 80s, and I would read a lot of books from the 70s and the 60s, I actually have a really, like, one of the early runs of like the Jack Kirby Stan Lee Thor, like the old Essentials. I think you get this really big book with black and white versions of the original comics. I noticed that to Mim's point about Thanos, the writing was so good. It was so in character. And the thing is, they never, they didn't assume that you were too stupid to know what was being said, because it was being written at a college level back then. And I noticed that these days, it's so infantile and sophomoric and stupid. Now, am I wrong with that? Because that's what I'm picking up.
No, not at all. This is the, oh, sorry, go ahead, Aiden.
Oh, no, I just think there's always stupid shit. Like, there's always been, like, the Dark Age was a great example of just pedantic, stupid shit. So there's always going to be stupid shit, but it's not all over. It's in indies. Like, Ellis and Remender, there are people who are doing good work.
Sure.
Brian Wood, there's all kinds of great writers out there, but they're just not working for Marvel because maybe, Marvel is appealing to, like, the stupidest common denominator? Not sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of their stuff just it comes across like it's pandering to millennials. And, America Chavez is a good example of that. The new Wasp comic, Unstoppable Wasp, is a lot like that.
We're doing science.
Yeah, Riri Williams.
Oh, yeah.
Her whole thing, like some of her things, like, appeals to millennials. And the big problem that another good one, the new, I think it's Spectacular Spider-Man, the relaunch. Same thing. Peter Parker is talking like he's 10 years younger than he is, because it's such a weird contrast. Because love him or hate him, the current Amazing Spider-Man writer, Dan Slott, he writes Peter Parker like a guy in his 30s.
Yeah. And
this other comic, it's almost like I'm reading Ultimate Spider-Man all over again before Peter got killed. So it's such a strange thought that they feel that they need to do this, and I don't think that it moves comics.
No.
Well, this is also a generational thing. If you're talking about 70s writers, these are guys who, back then, the whole thing when you were young was to look older. That's why you would grow a little sparse mustache. You'd smoke and you'd drink because you wanted to grow up and be a man. But now we have 40-year-olds wearing hoodies. And like you said, Peter Parker, he's an idiot. He's a childish idiot. He shows up to a date wearing his Spider-Man suit and a blazer. Like, you're to the point where you want the characters to act like children, whereas before children would try to grow up and act as adults. It's a regression.
Well,
yeah,
I mean,
that's interesting.
Huh. You know what's really funny about that? Sorry, real quick. What's really funny about that is because since Disney bought Marvel, is that was like a really big criticism of the Star Wars prequels. Was that everyone wants to be Han Solo when they're a kid because he's the old cool rogue. No one wants to be, and maybe Luke, but nobody wants to be fucking Anakin, And especially in that first Star Wars movie. And that's an exact thing. It's like, nobody wants to be this ignorant, stupid kid. We want to be badass. That's the fucking point of a fantasy. That's the point of this escapism.
It's a wish fulfillment thing. That's why Captain Marvel sold better than, when I say Captain Marvel, I mean the DC version. That's why that one sold better than Superman back in the 40s. I think Mim wants to say something.
Yeah, this is going to be a little bit of a long one, and it's sort of an unfinished thought. But I've been thinking on this quite a bit, and to be honest, it blends a lot of what you guys have been saying together. And I mean, the big question is what role does superhero comic books play within American culture? Now, I mean, one of the you got the sayings about America. It is the home of the free, land of the brave, but the other thing it is the home of is innovation. And one thing that comics did, well, what American society did very well was innovated to the point that you have mass production. And what comic books are is a mass production of an American folktale. Because what you tend to find with American cultural productions is that they take a lot of influence from Europe, which makes sense because you had those waves and waves of European migration to America, bringing their own stories, bringing their own cultural influences. I mean, that's exactly what the whole story behind American Gods is. So with that, you had Stan Lee create characters like Captain America that was taking the old elements of heroism. You have, Dr. Doom, who's the old element of villainy, and mass producing that for an awful load of, to span America. Every comic book store across America has the same stories within it. Now, there is, in literature theory, there's a guy called Vladimir Prop, and what he did was he looked over 100 Russian folk tales, and he was able to draw out specific elements that underpinned particular characters. So you had the hero who represented these things, the villain that represented others. You had false heroes, donor characters, and stuff like that. So superhero comics, in essence, American culture. Now, when we talk about, these SJW editors, writers, and stuff like that, they almost seem to come from a position that America is bad, American culture is villainous, it's murderous, it's oppressive, and they need to twitch the plot. They need to switch it up. They need to show everyone just how bad America is. And I honestly think that's why now we have very few villains, and we have so many stories where it is just hero fighting hero and stuff like that, because who's to say what's good and bad, guys? We're looking at this from a postmodern perspective and all that.
Yeah.
Unfinished half full.
I wasn't familiar with the guy that you cited there, but that's the same research as Joseph Campbell, the hero with 1,000 faces, which is the classic heroes myth, that it follows this cyclical journey of you go from starting out in a safe environment that you understand, and you go through these trials, and you come out victorious the other side after having been changed in some way. Mm-hmm. Every single great story follows. Star Wars, bringing that up again, George Lucas was friends with Joseph Campbell. He gave him pro tips on how to construct the great hero narrative. And moreover, it's interesting that you mentioned stuff about Europe, and I was thinking that, about the European invasion of comics with Alan Moore and Grant Morrison and Warren Ellis, those guys who all came over around, Morrison and Moore on the same period of time, and revolutionized a lot of what happened with American comics coming out of the CCA, the Comics Code Authority. Mm-hmm. It's interesting, though, because we were sort of stuck in a little bit of a stagnation, and because the CCA was stifling for stories.
Huh. But that's the thing. they bring that European and well British perspective, and we do seem to be a little bit more relaxed about particular issues. You know, something like Transmetropolitan and stuff like that. You know, was quite on the nose, and it's a great story. But then again, you also see with this twitch in the plot. I think that's one of the reasons why people are very, very upset with Hydra Cap. Yes, you have got the whole, you know, what Captain America is supposed to be, but if you're looking at it through Prop's perspective, Captain America was a mythical hero all throughout, 50 years of American publishing culture. And in this one instance, they've turned him from being a hero to being a false hero, someone who presented himself as a hero just until the point that we realize, oh, no, wait, he's the bad guy. And everyone goes, but he's not a villain. He is our hero.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Captain America hasn't been allowed to be a hero for any sustained amount of time in any prime or normal way since 9/11. 9/11 happened. We got a hand-wringing couple issues, and then he's either been in another dimension, dead, replaced, on the run. What do they come back? Come back. He doesn't want the shield. Come back. Extremely aged. And now, retroactively from the beginning, a Nazi the entire time.
Always a Nazi. Oh my god.
Shaman King XYZ put a comment in the chat earlier. He said, Brian, do you know something funny? I was just watching some videos talking about how the My Little Pony comics have had consistently better writing than SJW Marvel. And I will tell you, Shaman King, you are probably watching Mim's videos, because he's done at least 2 on the topic of My Little Pony. And there's actually a comic they made. Was it like a cross-promotional thing to promote their movie? And it's actually got better writing than Marvel Comics currently does. Why don't you talk a little bit about that for these people who don't know?
Right. So, Hasbro are bringing out the new My Little Pony movie in the future, and they've just decided to do a whole tie-in comic that goes into the backstory of some of the villains. And I thought, just as a laugh, you know, because I'm friends with a couple of brony YouTubers, saw one of them cover the comic. I thought, all right, as a laugh, I'll read it. And I'm going through it, and I'm like, this is actually legitimately interesting. You know, the villain of the Storm King, he comes across as this sort of cross between Deadpool and like Jafar from Aladdin. You know, this really mincing over the top bad guy. You've got this magical artifact that's meant to bring power, but also with it ruin. And he just descends upon this country, takes it over, just absolutely takes it over, ruins the army, takes it over. And it's surprisingly deep. He's sitting there and he's like, well, I've defeated you, but I don't want to rule, because if I rule you, that's going to mean taxes and administration. I'll leave you, the king and queen, to do all that, but just know that I could come and fuck you at any point I fancy. Right? And I'm like, this is deeper than most Marvel. And we're talking about the art as well. In the second issue, they introduced this female pirate captain, and she's a parrot. And they make it very, very apparent that she is a female, just very, very subtly. Like her costume, the coat blows out at the hips, making her hips look bigger. They give her a little bit of makeup, a little bit of eyeshadow. She doesn't have breasts, but the curvature of her bodice gives the impression, the lines, that this woman has a female figure. And I'm thinking back to, you know, the new Ms. Marvel and Captain Marvel and stuff like that. I'm just going, the balls to do that. And it just makes me laugh that a comic book series that is designed to promote the movie for a toy line is producing a better story than the House of Ideas is.
Let's get into the hashtag MakeMineMilkShake. I don't know how much you may have been paying attention to it, but I noticed that based on your videos, you might have slightly different positions on this whole mess. So I guess, you know what? I'm going to let Diversity explain it, because he's done some more videos on it from what I can tell.
He's also like at the center of it in some ways.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, yeah. Tell people about what this is, because they not everyone watching may know.
Okay, so MakeMineMilkShake started with the crew that are now known as the Milkshake Girls. Basically, about a year or two when Marvel started their flood the shelves strategy, they had to crew up some more editorial staff, to which they decided to find the 8 whitest girls at Bryn Mawr College and give them, they showed them an Archie comic and they said, what is this? And if you said comic or book, you got hired. So basically, they all went to a local place and they did OMG milkshakes, and they got about 500 You Go Girl. I don't know why that's an accomplishment. And they got 3 very, very light, mildly salty comments. Now, I've got a theory that this was done on purpose. But what happened is then it became the white knight. How can you attack these women for doing this? They're just women having fun, but they weren't really attacked, and they're actually adults, so everyone's fine. Then basically in the middle of an event, right before another event, so in the middle of Secret Empire, the week before our Marvel Generation, so an event, while an event another goes, the entire comic book industry, and especially Marvel, came to a grinding halt to protect basically 6 white girls from getting downvotes on their selfie. It was presented as fan misogyny. It was presented as attacking them just because they're women, but there was no attack. So people went looking for it, but it became some kind of like O. Henry like moral fable. There was no actual attack. There was just a clutch of virtue signaling. And I did one of them. I said fake geek girls. I'd say that anytime because I did a video showing myself being a fake geek guy. There's fake of everything. If there wasn't fake of geek girls, you'd just say geek girls and you know it was fake. But as AydinPaladin, she did a video about it. They get so angry because they know it's true. You can see their social media. You can see the things they do. They have no history. They basically come into the military as officers without going through officer school or boot camp or anything. And then when you say, you don't know how to read a map, sir, well, of course I know how to read a map. It's like you go to this thing and then this thing over there. So then it became kind of a snowball of them playing Little Bo Peep, more virtue signaling, then like a trickle. I think and this has become international news, I think they got all the way up to 8 mildly salty comments. One of which was mine. One of it's just like, be like, I'd bang her. Rich Johnson of Bleeding Cool said one of them was basically a rape threat. And
that
it just
was the
became
I'd bang
complete,
her was a rape threat.
So, which I don't think that's an actual thing that happens. I think people either do that or they don't. Right? If you threaten to do something, you get arrested for it. There's a viable thing. But so then it was encouraged. People hashtag, people took pictures of Milkshake. DC Comics whipped out the diversity ruler and showed that they were several inches longer than Marvel, with their like 50 women that aren't, just assistant editors that are going to be used and thrown away. And basically it completely overshadowed Secret Empire. It completely overshadowed the launch of Generations, which are the 2 major events for the year. And it basically, the funny thing is, stop me if I talk too long,
Nope.
Heather Ontos was the one actually talented group of the random women they hired just because they were women and they had the right politics. Her book,
Heather,
Gwenpool, which I thought is excellent. I bought it to rip it and roast it. I ended up loving it. I shared it. My son liked it. My daughter liked it. I've recommended people. They say, oh, yeah, this is a great book. So she sullied her reputation by basically, purse puppying herself. I'm just a little 27-year-old girl. No, you've been an adult for 9 years. You're fine. You're all fine. Basically, it was one of those things where nobody really won. This is I believe it was a way to distract from Secret Empire being a dud, from Generations. They knew it was going to be a dud. I think it's a way to save a lot of people's jobs, making the Milkshake crew the public face of Marvel. The old thing, you wouldn't hit a guy with glasses on, would you? You wouldn't fire a guy who has a female assistant editor, would you? And that's a fact mixed with some of my opinion.
Mm-hmm. What was your salty comment?
Oh, I just typed, on a response to a response, not adding anyone, I just put fake geek girls when I saw the picture.
Oh, okay. Ooh, yeah, that's triggering. Don't ever say that.
Yeah, again, if you get, yeah, I said this before too, and thanks for bringing that up. If that upsets you, and you're a woman who supposedly likes comics so much, why would that upset you if it wasn't true? If someone came up to me and called me a fake geek girl, I don't give a shit on Twitter, first of all, but to my face, I would just laugh because it's not true. I'm a massive, like, loser nerd. That would be just an absurd statement to make. So why would it hurt my feelings? Oh, it makes them so mad because it's fucking true.
Right.
Yeah.
Micah, I know you want to talk about this.
I do, because some people actually got pissed off at me over this. Oddly, and they'll probably be shocked to realize that I actually agree with both diversity in comics and Aiden on the sense of, you're gonna get salty comments on Twitter. I get them all the fucking time. I mean, I'm back in my, I guess, heyday as a video game critic. I got a death threat over a Dragon Age 2 review that I did. Somebody said he was going to shove my Jew head in an oven. I'm like, I'm not even Jewish, you asshole. But my biggest problem is that there is this. I kind of felt like, and I could be wrong on this, is that some of the guys that were making comments were kind of just looking for a fight. And the problem with that is that you can make people that are in your proximity look stupid, make other fans look stupid. On the flip side, there's always going to be dumbass trolls on the internet who are going to say stupid shit to you. And the fact that these people who are working for a company that has such a legendary status behind it are honestly bothered by what a few dumbasses on the Twitter say is beyond my comprehension. But basically, it kind of came across to me like just shit slinging on both sides, when really it was a situation that could have been avoided. But ultimately, though, my whole thing was that people were saying that this is the next Gamergate, and I shot that down because I it's not, honestly. Like, it. First off, we've been having these issues with comics prior to this event. This is not the catalyst where everything changes. Things have already been changing, and sales have been going down and down and down and down. And unfortunately, and Diversity in Comics said this. We basically just bought ourselves another year of Ta-Nehisi Coates writing Black Panther. We just bought ourselves another year of uber butch Captain Marvel, because now, again, these people become unfireable.
You're going to double down. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. My whole thing is that you have to make people face economic reality, because at the end of the day, and, my most famous, I guess, video that I've ever made is called Social Justice Doesn't Sell for a Reason. Normal people don't give a shit about their politics at all. They just want to read fun comic books. That's it. And when your comic books aren't fun, they don't sell. So if you leave it alone and you don't bug these people, you leave their Twitters alone, you dismiss them as idiots, then basically what you do is when the sales start dropping and when the good stuff starts selling better, then all of a sudden they have to face the reality that their approach was all wrong.
I was talking to Captain Cummins, who's in the chat, and y'all ain't subscribed to him, do so now. But I was saying to him, you watch tomorrow, you're going to see the comic press, maybe the Mary Sues, and even maybe some established news outlets running stories about how women in comics are being harassed again. It gives everyone a chance to pat themselves on the back. They write a half-hour little story, include a few Twitter screenshots, and then they get the clicks. And it's just funny seeing how repetitive and predictable this outrage machine has become, because lo and behold, the next day, even the Telegraph was writing a story about comic book Twitter drama,
Yep. That was the thing. I noticed that how fast the media picked this up, the comic book websites, and as well as even the mainstream media picked this up, and that rang very suspicious to me. Like, they immediately turned it into a big controversy. Where if it's just a few trolls on Twitter, or a few people that are unhappy with you, it's not really news, but they made it into news. So
It's also because you tend to find with journalists, they have a pre-established narrative ready. You know, it is a matter of just filling in the boxes. So when it comes to woman harassed online, they have that template there. You scratch out Anita Sarkeesian and you put in, is her name Antos or something? You put her name in. You know, you just hit send to publisher, done. And I mean, the big question is really, when we go back to it, you know, how much power do these assistant editors have within Marvel? How much power do they have over the actual production of the comic books as they hit the shelves? You know, is it these people where we have to listen and believe women when they tell us their stories? You know, and especially when they say that this will produce better sales, when there's no evidence for that whatsoever.
one of the things that I noticed during Gamergate, especially later, was there was a split within Gamergate. There was a divide that was forming. And mainly what it was depending on, like, there were people that were trying to figure out what Gamergate should focus on. There was a camp, and there are probably more camps in this, but I'm going to focus on the two main ones that I saw. One camp was, we have to just focus on just the ethics, and just basically like getting the journalists to correct their behavior and essentially realize that they work for us. And then there was the side that was basically like, this is not the cause, this is a symptom of something bigger, which is social justice ideology, and that has to be fought in some way. And I think that what we're seeing in all other areas, it's not just in video games, which obviously it's still in video games. I mean, now you can play, black Nazi women in the new, Call of Duty. And I think that actually Anita Sarkeesian was actually involved with that decision. She was actually involved at that level. But we're not seeing it just there. Obviously, you're seeing it, it's like doubling down, as Diversity points out. You're seeing this in film, you're seeing this in the Hollywood sort of culture itself. You're seeing it in video games, you're seeing it in comics, you're seeing it in tabletop gaming, and like all kinds of like hobbies that were essentially like the domain of mostly men and like, well, nerdy men and nerdy women. So it's sort of like infecting everything in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and it's upsetting to me as someone who's been maybe not upsetting but disturbing or disconcerting, as someone who's been like, this is what I hear all the time, is from these women. They act like they're so unwelcome in these communities, and honey, I've been doing this my whole life. And it's not just comics. It's tabletop games. It's Magic the Gathering and D&D and all that kind of stuff. I've been doing that for forever. People, the guys who are all into this, they're like so excited that, oh, a girl is interested in our thing. But now I think that's going to change. Because that's how it was, I'm going to say 2008, 2006. Now there's this fear that these women are getting into this just to take it over so they can bitch about feminism.
Well, there are women that are, and some men too, that are getting involved with something that they don't have an interest in, and they want to change everything. So they come into the hobby and they're like, oh yeah, I'm totally into comics, guys. Seriously, I like watched the new Spider-Man where he like fights Two-Face. It was great. And then they go in and they get into positions of some influence within the industry, and then they want to change the drapes, and they want to change the carpets, and they want to repaint everything. So of course it makes the people who have essentially built the industry with their dollars, because the thing about comics is it's huge now as a cultural influence because of these humongous blockbuster movies that are coming out every year. So when you see these massive increases in interest in this whole comic book genre, thanks to the Marvel universe, and now the DC cinematic universe is coming, and all the stuff that's on television and all the stuff that's on Netflix and everything, then of course you get people that are looking at this and they're like, I want to be a part of that, but they don't know anything about it. But then they want to bring their their politics, their sensibilities, their feels into it, and they want to alter it to fit with their, to fit their sensibilities. And of course, the nerds that have basically spent so much money and time and, energy into their passion, into this interest, are going to become protective because they don't want it to change. I mean, there are people expressing concerns, and I'm one of them, that even the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which I think has been pretty solid, if not fantastic, for most of its run, is going to start heading down that road. And I'm expecting that either Black Panther or Captain Marvel is going to be when you see the serious shift. I mean, even Spider-Man Homecoming had some slightly cringy bits, but you know, this is something I think that is a genuine concern, but unfortunately, people are going to they're going to essentially cry it's sexism, it's racism, it's whatever, and they're not actually going to consider that these people have a point.
Yeah.
And that what that brings about for me is that is this something that we deal with? I mean, if we can, we may just have to endure it. But is this something that you do by fighting the ideology itself, or at least trying to keep it in check? Or is it something that you simply focus on what is achievable, like not spending money on the shit that you don't want?
I think that it's possible for both to be correct. I mean, I think that it all depends on how you do it. The big problem that I see online is that people, you know, and I get asked this sometimes too by people who watch my stuff, is they ask me, you know, how do you fight this? And what I always say is the last thing you want to do is become a hammer in want of a nail. Because if you become a hammer in want of a nail, you will hit everything, no matter what. And you'll hit it with the same kind of force and furiosity. The thing about this is that sometimes you will hit a hammer and you'll hit a nail and it's perfect and it's great and you do the right thing. And then you'll hit a kitten the next time you do it. You know, and then you end up looking like an ass. It's a much better idea to think about what you're doing and what you're saying. Just learn about why this is wrong. Learn about why this caused problems. And then, you know, unless you want to become a content creator like we have, then just talk to your friend. Like if your friends are going down that path, just talk and be like, hey, you know, that's really, you know, no, men aren't some giant cabal that's looking to rule the world, you know, so on and so forth. As opposed, you know, and on top of that, I think that the more that people start to understand why this bullshit is bullshit, the less, you know, these people are going to, you know, start making money. And then, like, goes back to what I said earlier, they're going to have to face the economic realities of, oh shit, what we're doing is not going to make me a living, and I'm stuck in an apartment with 5 roommates, as Diversity in Comics said earlier.
I agree. One thing that I think we need to point out as it refers to Gamergate is that with a lot of these people, someone like Anita Sarkeesian, her job is to be a professional victim. That's how she makes her money. Now, being a professional victim is only a profitable job so long as anyone pays any fucking attention to you. So, and it's difficult because as content creators, well, part of what we do is report on stuff that we see, correct? And have to like, hey, look at this thing that's happening. This is messed up. So there's that desire to do that. But at the same time, if you don't, vote with your wallet, don't buy it. One, and yes, encourage others, encourage your friends. And if you're not a content creator, encourage your friends. And as hard as it is, if you ignore them, I think they'll just destroy themselves because nobody's buying it. And like, you know, the 5 of us, 6 of us here who put money into this industry, if we vote with our wallets, what are they going to be able to do beyond just implode?
There's this thing that I've been noticing because I think I forget who I copied this from. Everything I do, I just copied from somewhere else. But asking like a couple of questions at the end of every video for the comments. And one of the things that I'm shocked by, because I always just thought comics are dead, comics are dying, and there aren't a lot of fans. There is a huge, huge audience that wants to come to comics. And and they're just waiting for comics to actually want them. Because this is actively pushing it away. It's the thing of like, you know, the kid in junior high who never showers and just reads manga all day and doesn't talk to people. He goes, why do I have no friends? Well, you got a whole high school of people that are willing to be your friend if you actually want to be a friend to them. Marvel is actively pushing people away. The funny thing is that, like you said, the licensed versions, the movies versions, are the versions people want to see. Riri Williams is not on any of the barely any of them. Some people have shown me she's popped up in a couple of the video games, but it's like puzzle games. It's the smaller games, the side games. When they have this bigger game, they have Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers, and they make her pretty. They have her feminine because that's what normal people want. These little niche industry problems of scaring people away. Once it gets to be real money, then they go for stuff that people actually like.
Yeah.
It's also bizarre to me that there's this concept that women hate like sexy female characters. Like that's not also a sort of attractive
so
thing for
untrue.
women. I don't get that at all. I mean, like I loved Corey and Storm when I was a kid. Like that's two very sexualized costumes.
Well, the funny thing is
Yeah,
that.
I've always. Oh, sorry.
Well, no, it's okay. I'll let you. I'll give it back to you right after I'm done. The funny thing is that from what I noticed, the way that, in general, not in every case, obviously, hashtag not all. If when men read or when males read comics or books or whatever, they usually read them from an outside perspective, like as a third person viewer that's experiencing what's happening. When females read books and comics and stories, they usually tend to project themselves onto a character that they like. They put themselves in the shoes of them. This is why when you read romance comics, the female characters in romance comics, or I'm sorry, not romance comics, romance novels, like the Harlequin romance novels, they're always written in a way that is extremely sort of flat and dull. Not that the characters are written poorly, but there's nothing really that stands out in terms of personality, so that the woman who's reading the book can just pretend that it's her. She projects herself onto the story. That's
50 Shades.
It's
exactly what 50 Shades is.
It's exactly what 50 Shades is. It's what Twilight is. It's what basically every Harlequin romance novel is. The women's always have the same personality, and it's kind of like the negative traits are the kinds of traits that most women tend to believe about themselves. Like, oh, I'm a little bit clumsy and a little bit awkward, and I'm not perfect, but I look all right. That kind of thing. That's basically just a tool to help those women get into it. And I think that when they read a media outside of that, even if it doesn't do that, they want to see themselves in the female they're reading. So if the woman is sexy and they like them, then they kind of think of themselves that way. It's like seeing the best about you. It's idealized on purpose. Thank you guys for coming on to the stream today. We will talk to you very soon.